Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Irish Londoners podcast. I am the host, Sophie Brennan, and have decided to create this podcast for my college final major project. This episode will be focusing on 1960s immigration from Ireland to London and the challenges these people often faced. I've been lucky enough to have interviewed a person with first-hand experience of immigration during this period, Michael Brennan, who came over from Kilkenny in 1964, so be sure to stay tuned in and not miss the interview.
When Irish eyes are smiling, sure it's like a morning spring. In the lilt of Irish laughter you can hear the angels sing. When Irish hearts are happy, all the world seems bright and gay. And when Irish eyes are smiling, sure they steal your heart away.
Before I can go on to discuss Irish immigration in the 1960s, I feel it's important to briefly recap Ireland's history to help explain why for centuries people have been leaving. Economically, Ireland has suffered from British colonisation and oppression. This is shown in many occurrences in history, such as the 17th century conquest led by Oliver Cromwell's armies, where 41% of Ireland's population was reduced. Those who survived were made to relocate to poorer lands and others were shipped to Barbados or West Indian Islands as slaves. Following that, British penal laws were introduced which stripped the Irish of their native language, religion and education. In continuation, the infamous Great Famine of 1845 to 1852 highlights Ireland's history of suffering, with over 1 million people having died from mass starvation and disease due to the potato crop failure blight. The person in charge of the relief effort in Parliament, called Sir Charles Trevelyan, reduced government aid to the Irish on the belief the judgment of God sent the calamity to teach the Irish a lesson. On top of this, Parliament legislated that the financial burden of the famine would be placed on the landowners, which in turn made them kick out their residents to save money, making innocent people homeless. Approximately 2 million immigrated out of Ireland on coffin ships during that period. So, why did people in the 1950s and 60s continue to immigrate despite it being a century after the famine? Some people have claimed the 1950s in Ireland were one of the worst decades since the Great Hunger of the 1840s. Unemployment levels were high and agricultural industries were down by nearly 50% by 1961. An anti-partition league report of 1957 concluded that young Irish people in particular lacked national sentiment. This resulted in a wave of youth immigration in search of social freedoms and opportunities. Many came to Britain in a herd mentality, following friends and family over. 80% chose Britain because there was a sense it was closer to home. 500,000 Irish immigrants came to Britain between 1951 and 1961. By 1971, over 900,000 Irish were living in Britain, making up the largest migrant community. When arriving in London in particular, many experienced cultural shocks from the drastic difference between the rural communities they grew up in and the busy way of London city life. Many suffered from isolation and homesickness, which often led to alcoholism, as the Irish pubs were a space for people to go after a hard day of work. Moreover, some people struggled to find housing, and many had to hide their Irishness in order to secure a place to stay, with discriminatory signs up saying no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. An added difficulty to being Irish in London was the Northern Irish Troubles, which lasted around 30 years. It involved Protestant Unionists who wanted Northern Ireland to stay in the United Kingdom, and the Catholic nationalists who wanted a united Ireland and to get out of the United Kingdom. The IRA carried out several high-profile terrorism attacks in England. These targets included London department stores, public buildings and the Houses of Parliament. In 1998, the Good Friday Agreement was signed, establishing peace. Many Irish people living in London in this time were often profiled or scrutinised for their Irish identity, despite not having any relation to the violence or provisional IRA values. Despite their challenges, Irish immigrants were renowned as good workers and played a crucial role in post-World War II rebuilding in London. They built the roads and repaired the destroyed buildings, aiding to England's booming economy. Along with this, they sent back millions to their own home country. In London, many Irish communities and organisations were set up, such as the County Associations, GAA Hurling and Football, and the Legion of Mary. They enabled social gatherings to occur, such as the dance halls, which were an integral aspect to London Irish way of life. The Irish also had the Catholic Church, where in Kilburn 21 masses were celebrated each Sunday to accommodate the large crowds of Irish immigrants. Here is my interview with Michael about his immigration story.
My name is Michael Brennan.
So what year were you born?
I was born in 1947.
Do you know anything about your birth or your birth story?
Just that I was born at home in the little back room. I was baptised in the local church in the village. Any more than that, I don't know.
What kind of home did you grow up in?
A very busy home, not much room. There was mum and dad. I had 9 sisters and 1 brother, so there was 13 of us in a little small house with 3 bedrooms. So mum and dad had 1 bedroom, and the other 11 of us had 2 bedrooms between us, with 5 sleeping in a bed. I slept in a bed with 6 actually. It was all on 1 floor. We had no running water. Our toilet was a bucket in the shed outside, and we used to have to go to the fountain with buckets, bring water home for the tea and everything else. And to have a wash in the morning was in the barrel of rainwater out in the backyard before we went to school.
What was your village like?
Village was nice, quiet village. There was 4 pubs, 2 shops there, the school and the church. We always participated in the Tidy Towns competition and always did well. It was always kept well, the village. Didn't win it, but they came very close a few times. They were in the top 5. There was a committee there that put flowers out and look after them.
How was wealth divided in your village?
Well, the only ones in the village that had money were obviously the publicans and the farmers. There was quite a few big farms just on the outskirts of the village, all owned by Protestants, which we as Catholics got on very well with. I spent most of my life on the farm, on a Protestant farm, when I was finished school every evening, helping out on the farm.
Who was the main employer in your village?
There was no main employer in the village, but outside the village, couple of miles outside, was the Castlecomer collieries. It's mining for coal. My dad was a coal miner for 47 years there, and I was put down there before I was 15 years of age. I was 3.5 miles underground in the coal mine, which was no life for anyone. That is the main reason I jumped ship and came to England, for a better life. But there was also another factory, the other side of the village, which was a fireclay factory making bricks for the new houses and blocks. You didn't get in there unless you knew someone. That was never going to be a place for us to work.
Can you describe your parents? What were your relationships like with them?
I got on very well with my parents, especially my mum. My dad was a hard-working man. We had a loving family.
How many siblings did you have, and what was those relationships like growing up?
I had 9 sisters and 1 brother. Our relationship growing up was fine. I wasn't there for many years, as you see. I was in England when I was 16, so I can scarcely remember the younger ones.
What Irish or family traditions did you have when you were growing up?
Participating in the Gaelic games, football, hurling. Main one in our village was handball, which we had a massive handball alley. First one in Ireland, actually, that had a roof over it. They used to hold the World Championships there. The Americans and Canadians used to come and play against the Irish in the World Championships every 2 years. My brother was actually an All-Ireland champion in 1961.
What school did you go to?
I went to St. Patrick's School, National School in the village of Clough.
What was that experience like?
I was very good at maths and English. The teachers weren't nothing to write home about. They were horrible, really. But smacked for the slightest of things. And then we had another headmaster come, and everything he wanted had to be in Gaelic. Well, to me, Gaelic was no good to anyone. You had to learn Gaelic when we were there. I couldn't speak 2 words of it now.
What age did you stop going to school?
I stopped going to school. Well, I stopped going to the national school before I was 14. And then I went to the technical school in the town of Castlecomer. Tried to learn woodwork there. But I only stayed there a few months. I got a bit sick of the headmaster there giving me 10 slashes at the bamboo cane for no reason.
What age did you get your first job, and what was it?
Before I was 15, I was down 3.5 miles underground in the coal mine. I used to help out in the farms when I was 10 years of age. Never got no money from the farm. Used to get food, which you brought home to feed the family, potatoes, carrots, parsnips, whatever he had grown in the field. Came home with me of a night time.
What were the best parts about living in Ireland, like as a whole?
You were out in the country. We used to go away hunting rabbits, go away fishing. We had great enjoyment doing that. There was a crowd of us, lads all my age, used to get together and go away the weekends and evening times to do the hunting and whatever we had to do to get food for the table. And then, like I said, participating in the GAA games in sport.
What were the worst parts about living in Ireland?
Being put down the coal mine at 14, at nearly 15 years of age. I watched my dad suffer all his life there, and it wasn't going to happen to me.
What year did you leave Ireland?
1964.
And what age were you?
16.
What was the reasons why you and others left Ireland?
Get work and have a better life for ourselves. When I left the coal mine, I went to Dublin with my brother-in-law to work on the buildings as a second-year apprentice carpenter. But I was there only a while when the foreman, for no reason, came along and sacked me. I found out then that he had his own son ready to come in on the Monday to take over my job. So I thought, well, if this is Ireland, I'm definitely going. So I packed my bag, I went to the boat and came to England.
What did your journey to England look like?
Came over on the boat. In the 60s, it was known as the cattle boat and the mail boat. So we were up on top and the cattle were down the bottom. and you come to Holyhead in Wales and get the train from there down to Euston in London.
What made you choose to come to London specifically?
My sister lived in London, so I was coming over to her. Finsbury Park was where my sister lived.
What was the process you went through when you arrived to England?
My sister and her boyfriend were there to meet me at Euston and brought us back to Finsbury Park. Her boyfriend had a job sorted out for me already. I landed on the Friday and I started work on the Monday.
What was your first job in England?
My first job was in a timber yard in Tottenham, offloading the timber coming in on the barges on the River Lee. I met up with some lads in Finsbury Park that said, "Do you fancy coming working with us on the tarmac?" And that's what I did. Never looked back since. I was labouring at first, and then I was made up to a foreman, and then I became a supervisor. When I finished up, I was pricing all the work and going out estimating the jobs. Finished up as a pen pusher, you could say. I worked my way up.
How did the working environments differ in England compared to when you was working in Ireland?
Conditions were much better. I knew right from wrong. My boss treated me very well. He was an Englishman, but he treated us with the greatest of respect. Facilities and everything else were much better.
What struggles did you or other Irish immigrants have when you came over here?
Well, the only struggles I had was I was homesick. Probably if I'd had the money, I'd probably have gone back the next day. Around Finsbury Park at that time, there were signs on the windows saying no Irish, no blacks or no dogs need apply, That wasn't nice to see. You had quite a few Irish landlords. They took the Irish in, but they always charged you a little bit more than the rest of them because they knew you were stuck for some place to live.
What was there to do in your free time and social life?
We used to go to the pub. That was the first thing. That's where you met everyone. But then you found out that there was a lot of dance halls in London. I started going to the dance halls. That's where I met my lovely wife.
How did you find out about these social events in a time of no internet?
Being in the pub, speaking to lads that had been in England a whole lot longer than me. They knew where all these venues were, what used to go on, and also there was the Irish papers which advertised all the social events and dance halls that was in London.
What communities and organisations did Irish immigrants have in London at the time?
Irish Centre in Camden Town. You could always go there if you wanted any information. You had the Irish Centre in Haringey. You've got 32 counties in Ireland, and there are different associations over here. So I used to go to the Kilkenny associations, and we used to go to the Tipperary associations where Margaret came from.
Did you ever socialise with anyone who wasn't Irish?
I socialised with a lot of English lads that worked with us. We used to meet up and go for a drink and go different places, go on the Beaners every year to Southend and places like that. That was all a mixture of Irish and English and black lads. We were all the same.
Did the IRA attacks in London affect how people treated you or other Irish people for being Irish? Or was there a clear divide between them and the London Irish community?
It never affected me. It did make you feel bad to know that was going on across in your own country. Because when we lived in Ireland as kids, we never heard nothing or seen nothing on telly. Well, we didn't have a telly then anyway. We never heard nothing about the troubles in Northern Ireland. Well, there was Irish people over here that got tarred with the same brush as the IRA because they were Irish.
Did you ever plan on returning to Ireland? If so, why did you never return?
I never wanted to go back there to live because if there was anything there in the first place, I wouldn't have been over here. And seeing the life my dad lived in the coal mine, that wasn't going to be for me. This was my home. Got married, settled down, had our family. We still go to Ireland on holidays, but not to go back to live. No, this is our permanent home. Like I said, in this country now, our life is good. We're very happy.
In conclusion, the struggles and prejudices Irish immigrants faced when settling in London should not be forgotten and should not be repeated. With the significant rise of anti-immigration opinions and the 2024 State of Hopes report revealing Reformed UK's increasing popularity, claiming to have 200,000 members, we should all be more reflective and not be so keen to repeat modern histories of the States. Thank you for listening to this episode.
Near Arranmore, in the county Galway, one pleasant evening in the month of May, I spied a damsel, she was young and handsome, her beauty fairly took my breath away. She wore no jewels, no costly diamonds, no paint, no powder, oh, none at all. But she wore a bonnet with ribbons on it, and around her shoulder was the Galway shawl.